Breaking news: thousands of UK pensioners at risk of losing winter fuel payments. DWP confirms strict new rules for 2025. This winter, everything changes. The Department for Work and Pensions has quietly rewritten the rules on winter fuel payments, and unless you act before the deadline, you could lose out on up to £600 without warning. For the first time in years, automatic payments are no longer guaranteed, and millions of pensioners may now need to apply manually just to stay warm. This winter, the Department for Work and Pensions has confirmed a fresh set of rules for the winter fuel payment rules that could mean the difference between receiving hundreds of pounds or getting absolutely nothing. And for millions of older people across the United Kingdom, especially those already struggling with energy costs, these changes may come as an unwelcome surprise. The most critical question now is simple: are you still eligible? In years past, the winter fuel payment was one of the more straightforward government support measures. If you were born before a set date and lived in the United Kingdom during the qualifying week, usually the third week of September, you were likely to get the payment automatically. It was dependable, predictable, and for many pensioners, essential. But in 2025, that dependability has changed. For the first time in years, automatic entitlement is no longer guaranteed for all qualifying individuals. The DWP has updated the eligibility structure, requiring more people to actively apply, particularly those who receive benefits other than the state pension, those who have moved home recently, or those who live overseas. Here's what we now know. To qualify for the winter fuel payment in the winter of 2025 to 2026, you must have been born on or before the 22nd of September, 1959. You must also have lived in the United Kingdom for at least one day during the qualifying week, which this year runs from the 16th to the 22nd of September, 2025. If you fail either of these criteria, you may not receive anything regardless of your past history. But even for those who meet both eligibility conditions, being over the qualifying age, and living in the UK during the qualifying week, there's now an additional warning. If your only benefit is universal credit, or if you don't receive the state pension at all, you may no longer be automatically enrolled for the winter fuel payment. Instead, you could now be required to submit a manual claim. That's a significant and potentially costly shift. In previous years, many pensioners receiving income-based benefits like pension credit or ESA were automatically processed without needing to take any action. But under the new system, that automatic safety net no longer applies across the board. The risk is especially high if you've recently moved home, undergone a benefit review, or had a change in circumstances. Those administrative changes, many of which are outside your control, could quietly disqualify you without notice unless you proactively reapply. And then there's the issue of residency abroad. The United Kingdom government has tightened restrictions on overseas payments, especially post-Brexit. Pensioners living in most European countries are still eligible, but only if their living circumstances meet strict criteria, such as having genuine and sufficient connection to the UK. Crucially, overseas pensioners must now fill in a declaration confirming their continued eligibility. If they do not submit this in time, the payment will be withheld. The payment itself remains largely the same in structure. If you are aged between 66 and 79, you may receive between £250 and £400. Those aged 80 or over could receive up to £600, especially if they also qualify for additional cost of living payments. But these amounts are not fixed. They vary depending on your household circumstances. For example, if you live with another eligible pensioner, the amount you receive will be lower than if you live alone. And if you reside in a care home and receive certain benefits, your entitlement may be removed entirely. These rules are causing confusion, especially for people who received the payment in previous years without issue. The DWP is not sending out reminders or alerts in many cases, which means individuals who have moved home or recently changed their benefit status could miss the payment entirely without even realizing it. This is especially risky for those relying on the winter fuel payment to cover rising heating bills during the coldest months. Energy bills are still significantly higher than they were just a few years ago. Even though the sharpest spikes have eased, the average pensioner is still paying far more for gas and electricity than before the pandemic. According to Ofgem, the typical household energy bill will remain above £1,500 annually through the winter of 2025. The winter fuel payment, therefore, is not a luxury, it's a lifeline. To avoid losing out, pensioners are being urged to act now. If you think you may not be automatically eligible, contact the Winter Fuel Payments Helpline or visit the gov.uk website to confirm your details. If you need to apply, you must do so by the 31st of March, 2026. That's the hard deadline. After that point, no claims will be accepted even if you were eligible. The application process is simple but unforgiving. Missing a box or failing to provide bank details can result in rejection. For those applying from abroad, the process includes an additional residency form and may require proof of ongoing connection to the UK, such as a UK bank account or NHS registration. If your paperwork is not received in time, the payment will not be processed. There's also the issue of incorrect payments. Last winter, over 32,000 pensioners received either the wrong amount or no payment at all due to administrative errors. Some were paid late, others were overpaid and later asked to return the money. And yet, the DWP rarely provides detailed breakdowns unless you specifically request one. So if your payment amount this year seems too low or doesn't arrive at all, you'll need to act fast. Charities such as Age UK and Independent Age are encouraging people not to assume everything is in order, especially if they haven't received confirmation letters by early November. And for those in vulnerable health or on tight incomes, waiting until late December to chase a missing payment could be far too late. It's also important to remember that the winter fuel payment does not count as taxable income and does not affect other benefits. But it can affect your council tax support or housing benefit if you fail to report changes in total household income. That's where many claimants fall into traps. Receiving £300 unexpectedly in December may lead to unintended deductions elsewhere if not disclosed properly. So what's the bottom line? The winter fuel payment is still a vital financial lifeline for millions of pensioners across the UK, but under these new rules, it's become far more complicated and uncertain. Eligibility is no longer automatic or predictable. It depends on a combination of factors: your age, your living situation during the qualifying week in September, your current benefit type, and whether your personal information like your address or bank details has changed recently. In short, you can't afford to assume you'll get the payment just because you always have. If anything feels unclear, or if you've had any change in circumstances, even something as small as moving house or switching banks, now is the time to check. Because once winter sets in and the energy bills start to rise, you won't be able to go back in time and fix a missed deadline. Don't wait for a letter. Don't rely on silence from the DWP. Take action now so that when January and February hit, your home stays warm and your finances stay protected.